Welcome to our channel. Today, we bring you a true crime case that will leave you feeling outraged. A mother, driven by her lust for an illicit affair, took the lives of her innocent children just to be with her lover. Not only that, but she also masterminded the murder of her own husband. How was her heinous crime planned? Let's dive into this chilling case. March 5, 1996, Los Angeles, California. Orion Walker, a diligent engineer and devoted family man, lived with his wife, Marigold Fairfax, and their two young children in a small yet cozy house in the suburbs of Los Angeles. Their life seemed peaceful, like a picture-perfect family that many would envy. Orion was a dedicated husband and loving father, always coming home on time after long workdays to ensure he could have dinner with his wife and read to his children before they went to bed. He cherished his family above all else, constantly striving to create a harmonious home where peace and happiness reigned. Marigold Fairfax, in the eyes of the neighbors, was the epitome of a perfect wife and mother. She always appeared with a gentle smile, caring for her family with all her love, meticulously planning each meal and outfit for her husband and children. Their two kids, a boy and a girl, were her pride and joy. Neighbors frequently heard the children's laughter echoing from the small house, and no one could have imagined that behind this veil of happiness, something was beginning to change. Despite appearances, Marigold gradually felt disconnected from her life. The stability Orion provided had become a burden to her. The once warm family dinners had grown dull, and the joy that once lit up her eyes had begun to fade. She spent restless nights, no longer finding satisfaction in her role as a wife and mother, instead longing to escape the peaceful life she once cherished. Signs of unrest became more apparent. Marigold started coming home late, her gaze becoming increasingly distant from Orion. She grew cold and irritable, and family dinners were no longer the joyful occasions they used to be. Occasionally, she would slip away without a word, leaving Orion alone with the children, unaware that these behaviors were the first steps of a terrifying plot. These small but significant changes were the initial pieces of a tragic puzzle that no one saw coming in the early days of March 1996. The arrival of Caspian Whitaker completely altered Marigold Fairfax's life. Caspian was a powerful, wealthy man with an irresistible charm. He often appeared at the grand events of Los Angeles high society, where his sharp gaze, confidence, and mystery always drew attention. It was at a lavish gala in early February 1996 that Marigold first met Caspian. The moment their eyes met, something stirred within Marigold. Caspian was unlike any man she had ever encountered. His allure and commanding presence immediately captivated her mind. Marigold was drawn to Caspian from the very first moment. His sweet words, gentlemanly gestures, and confident demeanor made her feel as though she had entered a different world, a world she had always longed for but never had. Caspian not only made her feel valued and loved, but also seduced her with the opulence of a glamorous life. He led her into a world of extravagant parties, luxurious trips, and lavish gifts, causing Marigold to gradually forget the simple but mundane family life she once had with Orion. Their relationship began with secret meetings, stolen glances filled with longing, and late-night rendezvous. At first, Marigold felt scared and guilty every time she deceived her husband. She constantly told herself that it was just a fleeting adventure, a temporary thrill to fill the emptiness inside her. But as time went on, the pleasure and luxury Caspian provided drew her deeper into the affair. Every moment spent with Caspian made Marigold forget her role as a wife and mother, leaving only an intense desire for this new life. Each time Marigold returned home after her encounters with Caspian, she couldn't help but feel guilty when looking into the eyes of Orion and their children. However, the conflict within her grew stronger. On one hand, she had the family she had once loved and protected, and on the other, there was the luxurious life and intense passion Caspian offered. She began to feel suffocated in the very home that had once been her sanctuary. She wrestled between her guilt and the urge to break free from family life and chase after the promises Caspian dangled in front of her, a life of freedom, wealth, and no obligations. The peaceful family life became increasingly burdensome for Marigold. Evenings spent with her husband and children grew heavy, and deep down, she started dreaming of a future where it was just her and Caspian, a future without Orion and without the responsibilities of motherhood. After weeks of secret meetings and imagining a future without Orion, Marigold and Caspian realized that to be truly free together, they had to eliminate the biggest obstacle in Marigold's life, Orion himself. At first, it was just harmless discussions, but gradually, the plan to kill him took shape. Everything began with Marigold and Caspian figuring out how to make it look like an accident. They decided that staging a car accident would be the safest and most effective way to hide their crime and avoid suspicion from the police. Caspian was the one who suggested using sedatives. He found a strong drug that could knock Orion out completely in a matter of minutes. Marigold would discreetly mix the drug into her husband's wine during their last dinner together. Then, when Orion was unconscious, she would drive his car to a dangerous mountain road and push it over the edge, making it look like a tragic accident. Both believed the plan was foolproof. No one would suspect a car accident on a dark, deserted road at night. However, despite the greed and passion for Caspian pushing Marigold forward, she couldn't shake off her anxiety. In the days leading up to the event, she often lost sleep, her eyes filled with fear as she imagined Orion's blood on her hands. She couldn't escape the thought that she was about to become a murderer. Yet the image of the luxurious life Caspian had promised her constantly appeared in her mind, like a force driving her onward. That day, from the moment she woke up, Marigold felt tension weighing heavily on her. She prepared dinner as usual, but her mind was racing, calculating each step that would follow. Orion, unsuspecting, chatted with her like any other day, with love and sincerity, while Marigold struggled to hide the trembling in her voice. During dinner, her hands shook as she poured wine for her husband, mixing the sedative into the glass he was about to drink. She couldn't bear to look into Orion's eyes, sitting there silently, waiting for the drug to take effect. As Orion began to feel drowsy and then gradually lost consciousness, Marigold knew there was no turning back. Her hands trembled, but she forced herself to stay strong. She lifted her husband's unconscious body into the car and drove him to the mountain road she and Caspian had chosen earlier. With every passing second, her heart raced, both terrified and filled with hope for a new life, one where Orion no longer existed. That night, as planned, Marigold carefully prepared the final dinner for Orion. Everything proceeded as usual: familiar dishes, a bottle of Orion's favorite red wine, and a seemingly peaceful atmosphere in their cozy home. Inside Marigold, tension simmered like a slow-burning fire, but she hid it well, maintaining a calm demeanor. When Orion drank the wine laced with sedatives, her palms turned cold, and she couldn't bring herself to look at him. Just minutes later, Orion began to feel dizzy. His eyes grew heavy, and he finally collapsed at the table. The drug had taken effect. Marigold acted quickly, moving Orion's unconscious body into the backseat of his car and driving it to the mountain road she and Caspian had scouted earlier. The night was pitch black, with only faint distant lights illuminating the dangerous path ahead. Marigold no longer felt like she was living in reality. It was as if everything was unfolding in an unavoidable nightmare. When she reached the secluded road, where a steep cliff loomed ahead, she turned off the engine and took a deep breath. This was the moment she had planned for so long. With calculated precision, she pushed the car toward the edge. The engine off, the car slowly rolled forward, skidding off the road and plunging down the cliff, producing a deafening sound as it crashed into the rocks below. Everything went according to Marigold's plan, but as she looked down at the crash site, a sudden wave of anxiety washed over her. Would the police notice anything? The next morning, when the police arrived at the scene, Marigold played the part of the grieving wife, sobbing as she recounted how Orion had unexpectedly gone out without explanation the previous night. She feigned tears but couldn't entirely hide the underlying tension in her eyes. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until an investigator noticed something unusual. The car, though heavily damaged from the fall, had a strange scratch on the steering wheel, an inconspicuous cut that couldn't be ignored. The police began to grow suspicious. Why was there that scratch? And why did the crash scene seem too perfect, almost staged? While neighbors recounted that Marigold and Orion appeared to have a peaceful life, another officer noted the recent changes in Marigold's behavior. Every word, every gesture was scrutinized. The police couldn't immediately confirm Marigold's involvement, but these small signs began to spark a deeper investigation. The investigation into Orion Walker's accident initially showed no signs of foul play. The police concluded it was a car accident, with no clear evidence suggesting a crime had been committed. The accident scene appeared tragic. The car had plunged into a ravine, severely damaged, and Orion had died instantly. Marigold, playing the grieving widow, cried in front of the investigators, recounting how Orion had gone out that night without warning, leaving her worried. However, no one in the investigation team could have imagined that behind her shattered exterior was a meticulously planned scheme. However, there was a detective on the investigation team, Daniel Westbrook, who always paid attention to the smallest details. Although Marigold portrayed the grieving wife convincingly, her eyes and gestures seemed to forced. This urged Daniel to pursue the hidden angles of the case. He noticed an odd scratch on Orion's steering wheel, unlike the usual scratches from a collision. Furthermore, Marigold's story, while plausible, lacked clarity regarding the exact time Orion left the house. The neighbors of the Walker household recounted that recently, Marigold had become distant from her husband, no longer accompanying him on walks or participating in family activities. This began to stir suspicion in Daniel. He decided to delve deeper into their relationship, contacting acquaintances of the couple to learn more about the cracks that might have existed before the accident. Meanwhile, inside her own home, Marigold had no idea that another danger was silently emerging. Her eldest child, an 8-year-old girl, had accidentally overheard a secret conversation between her mother and Caspian. Though she didn't understand everything they said, the child realized that the conversation was related to her father's death. Filled with fear and confusion, she didn't dare to confront her mother directly, but decided to record the evidence as audio on an old phone she had hidden away. The police investigation gradually became more complex as Daniel Westbrook began to piece together small scattered clues. The scratch on the steering wheel, the change in Marigold's behavior, and especially the child's testimony would become the keys to unlocking the entire case. Gradually, the veil of mystery began to lift, and the suspicions surrounding Marigold became clearer than ever. Marigold had never thought she would have to kill her own children. However, after discovering that her eldest daughter had overheard the conversation between her and Caspian, her fear reached its peak. The child might know too much, and that posed a threat to her entire plan. With no other choice, Marigold knew that to protect her secret and the new life she was trying to build with Caspian, she had to act. The days that followed were filled with tension. Every time she saw her children, Marigold felt tormented. The innocent eyes of her eldest daughter pained her, but the fear of being exposed was greater than anything. Her mind was torn between the love she once had for her children and the selfish desire to protect herself. Night after night, Marigold lay in bed, thinking about Orion's death, feeling that she had crossed the line between human and monster. Murder no longer seemed impossible. On a fateful evening, Marigold decided to act. Once her children were sound asleep, she quietly entered their room. In her hands were 2 large pillows. Her heart pounded wildly, and every step she took felt as heavy as carrying the weight of the world. She stood by the bed, looking down at the 2 children she had once loved and cared for, but who were now threats. In that moment, Marigold felt as if her entire life was crumbling, but she had gone too far to turn back. She placed the pillow over the eldest child's face first, pressing down firmly, her hands trembling but determined. The child struggled, her small hands trying to push the pillow away, but it was futile. Within minutes, the room fell eerily silent. After killing the eldest, she moved on to the younger child. The little one was unaware, still peacefully sleeping. Marigold's hands no longer trembled. They were cold and filled with ruthless determination. She continued her act and only stopped when she was certain that both children had stopped breathing. After committing this horrific crime, Marigold stood silently in the darkness, feeling an emptiness inside. The children she once loved now lay lifeless on the bed. But instead of feeling relieved, she was haunted by the gruesome images. Everything had spiraled out of control, and she knew she had to flee quickly. The very next morning, Marigold and Caspian immediately made plans to leave Los Angeles. They believed that leaving the city would help them escape the police investigation and start a new life, as they had dreamed. However, neither of them knew that the police had already begun to grow suspicious and were following the unusual clues. Their escape had only just begun, but the road ahead was already painted with danger waiting for them. The investigation into Orion Walker's death had reached a dead end, but Detective Daniel Westbrook never gave up on the smallest of details. When the case seemed closed, the sudden disappearance of the Walker children raised new suspicions. With his keen eye and sharp intuition, Daniel began connecting the remaining pieces from the events that had transpired. The strange scratch on Orion's steering wheel, the odd change in Marigold's behavior, and especially the rumors circulating in the neighborhood about her secret relationship with the mysterious man. One day, while searching the children's bedroom, the police accidentally discovered an old phone carefully hidden under the eldest daughter's bed. On that phone was a recording of a conversation between Marigold and Caspian. Their voices, though muffled by static, could still be heard clearly discussing the plan to eliminate Orion. The child, terrified and realizing she was facing a great danger, had tried to record the evidence in vain, but didn't survive to bring it to light. The neighbors' testimonies also gradually revealed hidden truths. They recounted that Marigold often came home late and had strange phone conversations. These fragments, though isolated, began to form a complete picture in Daniel's eyes. He quickly concluded that Orion's accident was no coincidence and that Marigold was behind it all. It didn't take long for the police to realize that Marigold and Caspian had fled. As soon as this information was confirmed, a large-scale manhunt was launched. They coordinated with other police units to monitor major routes, airports, and even national borders. With clear evidence from the recording and the clues they had gathered, the police were determined not to let this couple escape the crimes they had committed. Meanwhile, Marigold and Caspian still believed they were one step ahead of the police. They prepared to leave the country, heading for a distant place where they thought they could start a new life. But their confidence was quickly shattered. A border checkpoint had been reinforced, and after days on the run, their trail was finally discovered. The police were ready for the final confrontation with the murderers, and Marigold had nowhere left to run from the truth waiting ahead. In the moment when the police surrounded them at the border, Caspian, in a panic, quickly turned against Marigold. To save himself, he provided all the details of the plan to kill Orion and how the two had executed the meticulous murder. Caspian hoped that by cooperating with the police, his sentence would be reduced, but what he didn't know was that Marigold had already prepared for this situation. Marigold, sharp and calculating, had been holding a trump card all along the recording she had secretly made of her conversations with Caspian. The recording not only revealed the details of the murder plot, but also proved that Caspian was the mastermind, the one who incited and pushed Marigold to commit the crime. Just when Caspian thought he had escaped, Marigold produced the incriminating evidence, ensuring that neither of them would evade justice. At the trial, both Marigold and Caspian stood before the court, with no defense left for their crimes. The clear evidence, combined with the testimonies and the recording, left the jury with little time to deliver their verdict. Both were sentenced to life in prison, forever paying the price for what they had done. However, before being taken away, Marigold turned to Caspian and gave him a mysterious smile. Coldly, she declared that many secrets remained undiscovered, things no one could possibly imagine. Her final words left a large question mark in everyone's minds, ensuring that the case would never truly be closed, and a shroud of mystery would continue to hang over the entire story. The case of Marigold Fairfax and Caspian Whitaker was not only a brutal crime, but also a chilling testament to greed, betrayal, and the consequences of misguided actions. What began as a seemingly tragic accident hid beneath it a meticulously planned murder orchestrated by two individuals blinded by ambition and desire. The greatest irony and pain of the case lay in the fact that Marigold was willing to kill her husband and children to protect her dark secret, but in the end, it was Caspian's betrayal that led to her downfall. What's more, though their crimes were exposed and both faced the punishment of the law, Marigold left behind mysterious traces that remain unsolved. Her final words at the trial cast a dark shadow over the case, leaving the public intrigued about the secrets still hidden. This case will forever be a tragic story, a testament to the destructive power of greed and betrayal within the human heart.